It's time to gather loved ones together for all the holidays' best spread. Lynn's has great prices on all your favorite Thanksgiving items, from delicious turkey with all the fixings to mashed potatoes and yummy pies. We have everything you need to create your perfect Thanksgiving dinner. Whether it's cooking the traditional meal, completely store-bought, or a combination of both, your best holiday meal starts here. Learn more and start shopping today at lynsgrocery.com. Lynn's, where delicious begins.
The views and opinions expressed by A Little Bit Culty are those of the hosts and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast.
That's true.
Any of the fire content provided by our guests, bloggers, sponsors, or authors are of their opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual, anyone, or anything.
Unless you're abusing people, then I have a problem maligning you.
Also, we're not doctors, psychologists, or wizards. We're just two non-experts trying to make you a friendly, informative podcast that helps you understand culty shit. Hey everybody, Sarah Edmondson here.
And I'm Anthony Ames, a.k.a. Nippy, Sarah's husband, and you're listening to
A Little Bit Culty,
a.k.a. ALBC, a podcast about what happens when devotion goes to the dark side.
We've been there and back again. A little about us. True story, we met and fell in love in a cult. And then we woke up and got the hell out of Dodge.
And the whole thing was captured in the HBO docuseries The Vow, now in its second season.
I also wrote about our experience in my memoir, Scarred, the true story of how I escaped NXIVM, the cult that bound my life.
Look at us, a couple of married podcasters who just happen to have a weekly date night where we interview experts and advocates in things like cult awareness and mind control.
Wait. This does not count toward date night, babe. We got to schedule that. That's separate.
So it's 2 days we got to hang out?
We do this podcast thing because we learned a lot on our exit ramp out of NXIVM, still on that journey, and we want to pay the lessons forward with the help of other cult survivors and whistleblowers.
We know all too well that culty things happen. It happens to people every day across every walk of life. So join us each week to tackle these culty dynamics, everywhere from online dating to mega churches and multi-level marketing.
This stuff really is everywhere. The cultiverse just keeps on expanding, and so are we. Welcome to Season 5 of A Little Bit Culty, serving cult content and word salads weekly on your favorite podcast platforms. Learn more at alittlebitculty.com.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean, hanging on to it, my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave, but I know.
And we're back.
We are back in a new country, new studio.
New studio, new lives.
Yeah.
Got a new do.
Yeah. You're almost American. I've been watching you. I've been seeing how you've
What
been
do you think's
integrating into, well, you know, you're not speaking Canadian anymore.
It's taken some time. You know, I have to say I kind of came here kicking and screaming, but I'm enjoying myself so far.
You're saying y'all.
I said y'all. I
Yeah.
mean, saying you guys just
Seriously.
it sounds stilted.
Plus, it's gender misappropriating, isn't it?
All that stuff.
Yeah.
Y'all is all inclusive.
Yeah, you can't mess with that.
No, you can't say no to y'all.
Yeah. They're not coming for you for that one.
Okay, y'all.
All
Let's
right,
get
y'all.
to it. Okay, y'all.
Let's do it.
Welcome to Atlanta.
We deliberated who we're going to start with here. Evan Rachel Wood.
It is a special one for me. I think y'all will see why. Our guest today withheld her alleged abuser's name for nearly 16 years. Actor and activist Evan Rachel Wood has said on several occasions in recent interviews that she fully intended to go to her grave with her horrifying story of vicious sexual, physical, and emotional abuse, including alleged anti-Semitic threats.
But in February of 2021, Evan took to Instagram and publicly identified the alleged perpetrator, the man that she met when she was just an 18-year-old up-and-coming Hollywood starlet, and he was a much older shock rocker with a reputation for dark stuff.
A dark kind of creative genius. Yeah.
Air quotes.
Creative genius.
There's a lot of air quotes in this room right now.
Yeah. So in speaking Marilyn Manson's name, a.k.a. Brian Warner, in this context, Evan unleashed, well, a total shitstorm.
Multiple women have since come forward with accusations of physical and sexual abuse. And Marilyn Manson, a.k.a. Brian Warner, a.k.a. your name for him is?
Captain Fucknugget.
Has been clobbered by several lawsuits, condemned by a few notable band members and roadies, and dropped by his record label.
And it's important to note for our listeners and our lawyers that Marilyn Manson has repeatedly denied the allegations and recently sued Evan for defamation over the accusations,
Sound familiar?
claiming it is all part of an elaborate quote-unquote organized attack.
Sounding even more familiar.
There, we said it. Marilyn Manson categorically denies all of it. It is all alleged. Alleged, allegedly, allegorific, alleged.
Alleged. That said, the temperature of the whole situation went up several degrees again early this year with the release of the HBO Max miniseries Phoenix Rising.
It's so good. Please watch it. Directed by Oscar-nominated filmmaker Amy Berg, Phoenix Rising chronicles Evan's journey from a 13-year-old child actor to emerging star coming of age in the glare of the Hollywood spotlight, to her nearly 5-year ordeal as Marilyn Manson's girlfriend, to the aftermath of leaving him.
It also shows what it can look like to transform trauma into civic action. Evan is on a mission to raise awareness of barriers that survivors of domestic violence face when it comes to finding healing, and she's working to shape public policy so that anyone facing this kind of abuse can get a fair shake in our shaky justice system.
In fact, Evan helped co-write the bill, the Phoenix Act, which was unanimously passed and signed into law in January 2020 and extends the statute of limitations for domestic violence in California. Look, the Phoenix Rising docuseries is beautifully made and also, truthfully, incredibly hard to watch.
For us, it was also familiar terrain. The twisted world Evan escaped from was a place where grooming, love bombing, and narcissistic abuse were the norm.
Not to mention that it's all at the hands of a so-called misunderstood genius who reminds us of a certain culty fuckwad who's currently serving hashtag 120 years.
And 5 years probation.
Reminder, we are a personal storytelling platform for survivors and experts. We're not judge and jury. We really try not to speak in absolutes. We try to condemn behaviors, not individuals. And we certainly believe that Marilyn Manson deserves the same due process as any other alleged abuser.
That said, we're going to make it clear right up front, we are Team Evan. She's calling out patterns of abuse and calling foul and abusive systems that enable this kind of behavior to exist at her own expense and providing an open book to some of her life's darkest moments. And for what? Does she get anything out of this?
She's someone who's had a really solid, well-respected acting career and has the ability to go make a very hearty paycheck by putting on a Westworld costume and pretending to be half android. As ways to make money go, it's a pretty plum gig. So why on earth would she go through the ordeal and sheer effort of all this advocacy and whistleblowing when it comes to the real threat of legal, physical, and emotional retaliation, and as a mom of a young child also, when she's got nothing to gain from this? Well, she stands to gain a bunch of culty Marilyn Manson fans trolling her, various naysayers, and all kinds of publicly sanctioned gaslighting.
Which we've already experienced a little bit of just with our couple videos that we've posted on her.
I was shocked to see the organized attempt of the trolls trying to tell us how, sorry, Evan is the abuser here? Evan's lying?
Yeah, well, this is what it looks like, right? So it's a coordinated effort to discredit the person, never address the behaviors.
Yeah.
So
Template. Seriously, it takes real guts to do what she's doing, and we're beyond excited to have her on our little podcast. It's not easy listening, that's for sure. Conversations like the one you're about to hear can be traumatizing for abuse survivors, so please listen safely to this episode. And if you or anyone you know needs support, you can reach out to the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, RAIN. This organization provides free, confidential support to sexual assault victims. Call RAIN's National Sexual Assault Hotline, 1-800-656-HOPE, or visit the website for more information. We've put this info in our show notes. And please do reach out to the experts. As much as we love everyone reaching out to us and we try to respond to everybody, we are not the experts, especially in this field.
So all that said, let's get on with it, shall we?
Yes.
Here's our season premiere, our chat with the brave, ass-kicking, amazing Evan Rachel Wood.
Here we are, and this is one of the gifts. We've been in touch for, I think, over a year now, and although we haven't seen each other like this, it means a lot to me that you're here and that we're connecting in this way. So welcome to A Little Bit Culty, and how are you? How are you doing, and how is your heart?
You know, taking it sort of moment by moment and taking the good moments and holding them close, because I know there will be other waves. I think I read a quote recently I think I posted it on my social media, and it was about getting through to the light at the end of the tunnel, but what's at the end of the tunnel and what comes after the light. And it's, well, there's going to be another tunnel, but there's also going to be another light. And that's sort of the journey I'm on right now. I think lots of tunnels, but a lot of light, in between, and just kind of riding the waves.
Such a great metaphor. I feel you. And sometimes I forget when I'm back in a tunnel, and then someone reminds me, usually nippy, like there'll be more light. Don't you find that once you've been through something like this, that it's almost a template for your own resilience for the future? Like it just keeps building?
Absolutely. Someone was speaking to me the other day about sort of the flip side to PTSD, and it's post-traumatic resilience. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a thing. That's absolutely a real thing. And so, yes, you have post-traumatic stress, but you also are more equipped to handle insane situations or trauma or hardships, or, you get very centered and focused in the midst of chaos. And that is very true.
Well, you know
at
what
least
you're
for
made
me.
of.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm able to really, even though there could be a hurricane around me, I do feel very calm in the center. And that's something that I didn't used to have until coming forward. And after this whole experience, it's sort of like, okay, well, at this point, whatever is happening around me, I know that, at the core, I'm okay.
So it's been 5 months since Phoenix Rising came out. How are you in that process?
It's interesting. I don't know if you guys experience this, but I've noticed that the people closest to me are still terrified to watch it. And so a lot of my close friends and people that I love still haven't seen it. So I haven't really been able to have a dialogue with them yet. And I get it. You got to do it in your own time because it can be triggering and you have to be in the right headspace.
For sure.
But it is weird to think, that there's this thing floating around and some of your closest, your close circle still kind of hasn't gone there yet. But yes, people are still reaching out. People are still finding it. Survivors are reaching out. You go to the grocery store, you go to an appointment, and suddenly survivors are everywhere,
Mhm.
as and you realize just, I already knew that it was so rampant and that it was so common, but you really do see them everywhere they pop up.
When you say you already knew that it was rampant like in your industry, the world, or because it was a shock to me to see, like after we went through
How
to
many
see
people
how
resonated?
much of it was out there and still is to this day.
Yeah. It's like, that there's evil things in the world,
Mhm.
but until you've really come across it and until you've been put into a system that enables it, I know I didn't fully understand at
Mhm.
all. There's problems, but you don't fully understand the scope until
Right.
you're going through it. And then it's, oh, this is so much worse than I thought it was.
Well, not anymore, but before, it's like I've said this on many times before. You don't know that you're necessarily in the clutches of, say, evil, whatever word you're, the dark forces, until you're out of it and the light shows up, and then you can actually go back and go, "Holy shit!" And then it's never the same because you can kind of see it, you can feel it.
You can. That's part of the trauma of being in a cult or in a cult dynamic is you can't see it when you're in it. So not only do you have to process like the sort of the shame of what happened to you, but also the shame of what you feel like you participated in, even though you didn't know what you were participating in.
Correct.
And it's like you have to reconcile these two sides.
Totally. I think that's why most people don't speak up when they recognize they've been a part of something like either of these things or both of the same thing, really. Different content, but same process of abuse and manipulation, is that people are so ashamed that they ignored their gut or didn't see the red flags or didn't, the worst question I know we probably both hate is, why didn't you leave sooner? Right? Like, could that societal misunderstanding is like, why would you tell anybody that happened? So the fact that you have is such a gift to people. And I'm wondering, is it different for you when people acknowledge you publicly or when they run into you at the grocery store and acknowledge what you did as, you as you versus you as an actor?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's something that I leave space for. People will come up and just start sobbing, and it's not a burden to me because, you understand what it's like to be there. And the empathy is so strong. And yeah, it is very different. It's also strange because like, when a survivor or somebody comes up and just sort of wants to be in the presence of somebody else that understands, that's very specific. But then there's this other side that's kind of like, that can feel weird, of this sort of like hero mentality, or like this thing that, good for you. You did this, like you're getting pats on the back. And I'm kind of like, ooh, I didn't.
You didn't do
Right.
it for that reason. Yeah.
Yeah. A,
Right.
I didn't do it for that reason. B, like I was in it for years, lobbying and doing the advocacy work. And I will continue to do that. But I take breaks when I need to, and I'm not in it all the time, and I'm not on the floor every day. And there are people that are, and they're really heroes. I mean, they eat, sleep, and breathe this, and I have just the utmost respect for them and
Absolutely.
everything that they do. So yeah, sometimes it can be a little like, oh, thanks, but like I'm not trying to get like, no.
I totally get that.
There's a lot more work to do, trust me.
You're right.
We tell our stories. We change the world. A Little Bit Culty is proud to support the #IGotOut project, which empowers survivors of cultic abuse to share their stories online as a catalyst for education, prevention, and healing. Learn more about the #IGotOut movement and find resources at igotout.org.
The Frankies were a picture-perfect influencer family, but everything wasn't as it seemed.
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here asking for help. He's emaciated. He's got tape around his legs. Ruby Frankie is his mom's name.
Infamous is covering Ruby Frankie, the world of Mormonism, and a secret therapy group that ruined lives. Listen to Infamous wherever you get your podcasts.
Meals bring people together, but for many families, providing their next meal can be a challenge. You can help by participating in Macy's annual Feeding the Hungry food drive. All proceeds go toward local food banks and families. Now through January 31st, you can purchase an icon in-store or online, or watch out for the blue Feeding the Hungry shelf tags, where a portion of your purchase will be donated to local pantries. Together, we can combat hunger in our local communities at Macy's.
Sarah and I do like a walk, when we talk about our next guest, and we were both agreed that watching Phoenix Rising was the one that literally felt like we were watching our story, almost like down to the markers. Normally I can do it and decompress, but this one was like, I went to bed with it. I walked in, I was driving my kid to school, and it was in my head the whole time, and the parallels were staggering.
Yeah.
Down to even how you were asked questions. One of the things that I became allergic to, and I watched some of your interviews, was some of the questions that demonstrated that the interviewer didn't really understand what they were looking at. And I thought you did a really impressive job of being patient and kind of educating. And I kind of feel like, it felt like you had to be a little diplomatic. I don't know you well enough to know when you're angry or not, but it felt like it felt like I was like, I could think she's best there and she's handling it well. And it was just, to your point, it felt like there's more work to do. And how do you handle that now? Because, I know when Sarah was going through that, I was like, Sarah, that person's not, I could kind of have her back. And I'm wondering, do you have those people in your camp? And, because it felt like, particularly you were 16 years in, and how's the help been and how's the support been? Because it did feel like you were the first one through the door in this in a lot of ways.
Yeah, honestly, having to do the press tour for Phoenix, I think, was one of the hardest parts, as you said, because you have the pressure of this movement, sort of on your shoulders, and you want to represent survivors and the issues, and you don't want to say anything wrong or be misunderstood. But to your point, I sometimes appreciate those questions because it gives you an opportunity to sort of spin it. When they ask me what drew you to him, it's like, well, no. Nope. Go back, reverse it. I wasn't like, don't put this on me. We're always kind of, because it's so ingrained in our subconscious just from messages that we've received through society and other people and from entertainment. And we just sort of automatically go into these patterns. And I think what you guys are doing and what we're trying to do is disrupt the pattern, and by being radically honest and shedding that shame and just telling the truth, which is not only incredibly difficult, but it's dangerous. Like, it's actually dangerous to tell the truth about these things sometimes. And that's the part that really gets me sometimes. It's just like, it just shouldn't be this hard to just tell the truth.
Yeah, the ecosystem protects the perpetrator more than nurtures the victim, which I was pretty intolerant of.
But also, it was dangerous for us in a different way. It was dangerous for us, like, legally, but never physically. Like, you were physically in danger. And
well, and legally now.
Yeah. Now you got the whole package.
Yeah, I had the whole shebang. Yeah. Oh my God. But yeah, L'chaim.
You're celebrating that.
But I don't know if you guys experience this, but when you make the decision to do something like this and to speak about something that has followers and that much power, I sort of had to just accept all worst case scenarios. You're not going, well, I'm going to do this, but I'm just going to hope that it's going to be okay. You have to kind of say to yourself, okay, but you also have to be okay with just the worst possible thing happening, whether that's a threat to your safety or getting sued, your career being over, your reputation being destroyed. And, you sort of go through the checklist and, do your best to just defend yourself against whatever's coming, but sort of this like acceptance of, well, whatever happens is going to happen, but I have to do this.
That makes you bulletproof.
Did you guys experience that?
Totally. You're like nothing.
Yeah.
I remember when we were deciding whether to go public in the New York Times, and we had to like hash that out. Like, the worst case is they'll release my collateral. That will be public. There'll be whatever is out there. The videos I'd made, defamatory videos against my family, they already knew that it was all made up because I didn't really have anything bad to say about them. So I had to make shit up. So they knew that whatever, if it was released, it was false. It was a false narrative. But we had to kind of go through those things. And the career thing was a bit different for me because I didn't have the kind of career that you had. Technically, I was a working actor, but not like there's other things I could do if that fell through. Like start a podcast. But we definitely didn't really understand the ramifications. Like, the parents and principal at my son's school know that we were part of this. Like, before, they just think we're part of some personal development program. Now it's sex cult.
And to be fair, watching Phoenix Rising, it was hard for me just to be embarrassed about my decision in joining a cult. And I think that pales in comparison to, what you had to own. And to me, it was the strongest thing I've watched in a long time, just to see. I mean, it just was pretty impressive to see you get up there, say all those things, own it, and hold your ground.
Yeah.
I can point to that as brave. And that isn't to take away from what we went through, because we didn't know what we were going through, and it's going to be scarier for everyone. But, I wasn't targeted, so it wasn't that hard for me. I felt more protecting my wife.
Right.
You were targeted in a different way.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all targeted. You said it best in there. It's like, I think the term was, it felt like it was his art.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's going to be one of the discussions as this goes on, is, are you just allowed to do whatever you want as long as you call it art, as long as it's under the guise of art or under the guise of self-help in you guys' case, or, it's like, but that's fraud. And that is what I think makes my situation a little bit culty, because there's a very charismatic person who's very charming and seems very wise and has, something new to offer, a new way of thinking. And if you're the kind of person that, is looking for a better way or looking for a way of liberation or freedom, that's very alluring. But then you're also stuck in this power dynamic, and this hierarchy, and suddenly you find yourself in a situation where you thought this is going to be enlightening, and it's actually trapped you, and it's just slowly like eroding away at your identity. And it's calculated. It's not even like, oh yeah, I just got swept up in it. It's like, no, this is like all step-by-step instructions on how to, dismantle somebody's psyche. When I watched you guys's documentary, I felt the same way. I couldn't believe how much I was relating to everything that you guys went through, the collateral that was collected. I mean, my heart just hurts so much for you because I understand what that's like.
Mhm.
And this feeling of, some people are waking up and some people are still asleep.
Mm.
And you don't really know who's on your side and you don't
Mhm.
know who you can trust. I mean, to this day, even coming forward, even with, I don't even know what number we're on now. I want to say like 50 people or something coming forward.
Wow.
You're still kind of looking around and looking over your shoulder like, wait a minute, but
Mhm.
who's the Judas? Like
Right.
which one of you is going to betray me, or throw me under the bus? And I have seen people come forward in support of him that were like acquaintances. I call it the dark
Yeah.
time, in the dark time.
Mhm.
They're like, yeah, I never saw anything. Everything was fine. I don't know what they're talking about. And some of those people definitely saw things and just aren't ready
Admit
to
it.
admit it and are still
Right.
in the cult. And some people genuinely didn't see anything because they don't do it in front of
Right.
everyone.
That's
It's
Mhm.
That's actually
calculated. It's
one of our
controlled.
like major points that we try to punch in the podcast, because we talk about groups where, obviously abuse happened, but it didn't happen to everybody. And when people say, and I even said this when there are accusations against KR, we call him Alan because we don't like to say his name.
I
You
totally
get it? Yes. When there were,
I get it.
back in the day when I was a believer and there was allegations, I'd say, well, it wasn't my experience. I've never seen that. So now that I'm out and when I hear people say that about anybody, I say, well, I'm really glad that you had a good experience. But I don't have to experience Hitler to know that he was bad, And speaking of, there's another parallel. Both KR and do you have a moniker for Brian? Yeah. They both were obsessed with Nazis. Like, what's up with that?
It's because of the mind control. It's because it's controlling the masses. I mean, in Brian's library, you'll find Nazism, you'll find Scientology, you'll find Charles Manson. There's a common theme here,
Mhm.
and it's very culty, and it's very rooted in mind control and rooted in sort of being your own god and gathering followers and essentially breaking them down until they're under your control. And so that's probably why you guys relate to my
Yes.
story and why some Scientologists relate to my story, or why some,
Mhm.
because it's the tactics are the same, even if the situation maybe looks slightly different.
Yeah.
The physical abuses is where I'm kind of intolerant of people with the narrative of I didn't see that, because once the physical abuse starts, it's a physical manifestation of the emotional abuse. So to me, it tells me that emotional abuse has been going on for a long time if that happens.
That is
So
correct. It's
I'm
usually
somewhat
after.
like, take a look at my brand. And then, if you don't pivot to that, then you advertise your ignorance, in my opinion. Like it's kind of like, but I have my boundaries.
Yeah.
So
What's that like, especially for women, especially like to not have your back?
I mean, I've been lucky. A lot of people do
Support you?
I have a lot of great women
Good.
in my life and in the industry for sure. And I really haven't read anything. Like I when I came forward, it's what's coming. You're like,
Mhm.
all right, here comes propaganda, here comes the smear campaigns, here comes the slander. I am gonna just block everything, and because even though it's not real, it's poison
Right.
and it gets into your subconscious. It starts making you second guess yourself. It's just I
Smart.
can't have it in my aura or whatever you want
Yep.
to call it. I just don't
I'm
want
with you. I'm
yeah,
with
yeah,
you.
yeah. So I just try to not let any of that in.
Good.
That's smart.
But it's hard when women don't support other
Yeah.
women.
But
What about
let's
men?
focus on the positive.
Also that.
I mean,
also
also
hard.
hard.
It's all
but,
hard.
But I
Yeah.
think one of the moments where I cheered the most is when former band member or a group, I'm not sure what role he played, but somebody, Dan Cleary,
Worked on the tour.
worked on the tour, reached out to you and had your back. And I actually think Nippy and I were both in tears because
I'm tearing up just thinking about it. Yeah.
It was my moment. I related to
Yeah.
Dan
Are you
a
still
lot.
in touch with
Yeah.
him?
Yeah. I've had to sort of stop talking to pretty much everybody because there's an active investigation and we kind of all had to go lone wolf for a while so as not to,
taint the process.
taint the investigation in any way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's been one of the hardest parts is that we're all sort of alone and we're not allowed to speak to each other or comfort each other or, talk to people that are in the same boat and be like, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
Other women that were in the show, you have that?
Yeah. I mean, I think, every now and then we'll kind of wave to each other on Instagram or
Okay.
have a little like, hey, how you good? Okay, good.
Okay.
But, we don't get to really support each other in the way that we want to. No.
I actually think that's a real fail in the system. because we had that around. I was supposed to be a witness, and then they didn't need me, thank goodness, because I had a newborn at the time. Well, that would have been no fun
Ugh.
to testify while
No.
breastfeeding. It's like I wanted to be in court, but I also like was so grateful that I didn't have to go. But anyway, my point being,
Court's
horrible.
horrible,
Like
yeah.
but I felt like that was a real fail. Like they had all these victim supports, but like really what we need is to be able to talk to each other and support each other. And we weren't allowed to either. So I feel you, and
Yeah.
light at the end of that
The
tunnel.
only time we were able to do that is in the documentary. And that was the first time, I met some of the other victims and actually got to, talk about the things that had happened to us. And you guys, I'm sure, know this. There was so much that's not in the documentary.
Right.
Yeah.
So much.
Mhm.
So much more evidence, so much more corroboration, and the things that I was being told, oh God, just being able to hear from especially the men that were in the immediate circle and the things that they saw. Because, I think in situations like this and with people like that, it's so misogynistic in the way that the boys are against the girls, and girls are sort of like an expensive bottle of champagne or like a fancy car. They're just like another kind of accoutrement that shows your power or shows your status. At least in the world that I was in, it was like girls were not really humans. They were things.
Wow.
And so I feel like some of the boys were let in on more of the secrets. Even if they weren't okay with it, they kind of have to, and I don't know if you experience this, like you get put in situations where you're like, I don't know what to say or do or how to respond because all of this seems wrong. Nobody else is saying anything. Should I say something? No, I don't want to make a big deal. No, it's none of my business, like blah, blah, blah. And then, I got to really empathize with sort of some of the things that the men went through and the things that they saw and the things that they knew. And they were kind of telling us what was going on behind the scenes. I clearly won't go into it here, but like,
no, tell
it
it.
was
What can you share?
horrifying to hear some of the manipulation tactics being used behind the curtain.
Wow.
Like there was things that would be done purposely to not only disorient us, but keep us in a constant state of like anxiety and like trying to fix something or trying to make him happy, and nothing was ever good enough, and we could never fix the things that were broken, and
My God.
it keeps you in a very dysregulated state so that you're easier to sort of manipulate. Like one of the things was, where's my credit card? And it would be, I don't know, we'll look for it. Okay. You start looking for the credit card. It's not being found. Why'd you take the credit card? Like, why are you hiding the credit? I'm not hiding the credit card. You start getting accused of things that you've never
My
done.
God.
And then all day you're like being yelled at and you're trying to find this credit card. So I'm telling this story, right? And then one of the other people goes, I hate to tell you this. He was hiding the credit card.
Oh my God.
And I was like, what? Yeah, he would kind of laugh about it and show us. He'd take the credit card, put it in his pocket, and then yell at you guys, where's the credit card? Find the credit. And I it was just stuff like that just like blew my mind to like finally get the other piece of the puzzle. Like it was already bad enough that I was getting yelled at all day about not being able to find the credit card, but the fact that they were the one actually hiding the credit card and they were doing this purely just to torture, like that's like, woohoo!
Yeah, that's next level.
My brain didn't work like
No.
that. My brain does not work like that.
Hey there! Hope you're enjoying this a little bit culty episode. If you're interested in more long-form culty content, check out my memoir. It's called Scarred, the true story of how I escaped Nexium, the cult that bound my life.
You can get it on Amazon or listen to it on Audible or find it at most bookstores in the, quote, total badass woman in nonfiction section, which is new.
Thanks, babe. I appreciate you. And now here's a message from our sponsors. Meals bring people together, but for many families, providing their next meal can be a challenge. You can help by participating in Macy's annual Feeding the Hungry food drive. All proceeds go toward local food banks and families. Now through January 31st, you can purchase an icon in-store or online, or watch out for the blue Feeding the Hungry shelf tags, where a portion of your purchase will be donated to local pantries. Together, we can combat hunger in our local communities at Macy's. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. What are your self-care non-negotiables? Maybe you never skip leg day or never miss yoga. Maybe it's getting 8 hours of sleep. I mean, that's my personal and everyone's dream, isn't it? Well, I
definitely have some non-negotiables. Like I'm in Vancouver right now and I'm spending literally as much time as I can outside in nature. Hashtag cold pools, hashtag crushing it. Nature is a non-negotiable. Not enough time in the fresh air and the trees around me and I start to feel not great, not myself, not grounded. Therapy day is a bit like my nature walks. I try to not miss it. And I know I'm just going to feel so much better all around if I make it a priority. I get so much out of it. It helps me put my worries and anxieties in their rightful place and helps me clear my mind so I can focus on what I really need and sometimes what I don't need. Like, I don't need to be overbooking myself just because I hate to say no to people. You know what I mean? Thanks, therapy. Thanks for helping me see that. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Look, even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/culty today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/culty.
But here's the thing with that. That can seem like a harmless prank to someone who's like, oh, I'm gonna
Yeah.
tease her, right? If I'm coming in and be like, I'm teasing her, but it's really from his perspective, the setup.
Gaslighting.
Yeah. It's the very definition.
Yeah, from the
gaslighting.
movie
Yeah,
slash
it's
play.
making the other person
Right.
100%.
God
Yeah.
damn.
Yeah. And yeah, there's difference between like playing a harmless prank and teasing
Of
and
course.
like breaking someone down and yelling at them and making them feel like worthless.
But you can defend yourself saying, oh, I'm just playing with her or something
And
like
some
that.
random roadie
Sure.
who sees that, who can't project like bad intent or evil intent or whatever you want to call it, can't imagine,
Could dismiss
it and not know what he's looking at. And I think that's like,
Sure.
why this is such a gift that you speak about it, because one person listening to this goes, oh my God, that's what my partner does to me.
But that's psychopathic
Yeah,
behavior.
but they don't know what they're looking at and they've been able to get for themselves, justify it or stay in the relationship because they have kids or whatever, all the things that happen, right? And they listen to this and they go, that's what he's doing or that's what she's doing or whatever it is. That's our goal, what we're trying to do here. Like, what are the red flags? What are the signs so people have that template in their lives?
Sure. Well, because like when I was in it, I think I just thought, oh, this is just this eccentric artist that needs certain things and they're temperamental and they're sensitive and they have big reactions to things. And like, you just have to understand that they're an artist and like, this is just like how they are. So, I prided myself on being like a strong person because it's like, well, I've been chosen and like, I can take it, and so suddenly it's like, the more abuse you can take, like the better you feel
Yeah.
about yourself.
Well,
And that's after a long time with the person and your brain's just been completely warped at this point.
Mhm.
And, at the time I'm thinking, oh God, yeah, he's having one of his moments, but I'm not thinking, oh, he's purposely trying to run me around in circles and exhaust me and run me into the ground and
Right.
disorient me and make me feel like I'm bad so that he has control over me. You're not thinking that. He's absolutely thinking that. And that's the difference between, somebody having a bad day and somebody maliciously doing something
For
who's
sure.
read about this, who knows what to do, and then
Right.
purposely does it. It's like that's a whole other level. That's culty.
Yeah. Yes.
He sets up the ecosystem of abuse. He normalizes abuse.
Yes.
And starting from the beginning, circle back to earlier, you said like you weren't drawn to him. He pursued you.
Yes.
I think that's a parallel that's really important to make, is that with cults, with all of these things where there's abuses of power, there's a lie from the beginning. He's offering you something and you're accepting something, but it's not what he's offering.
Yes.
Truly. We always ask our guests this. What did you think you were signing up for? What did he tell you he was going to give you?
I actually love this question because especially in my case, because Brian looks the way that he does and has made the kind of art that he has, people assume that you should have known what you were getting into. And, with that logic, like then every heavy metal band is like evil and abusing people and torturing
Right.
them. And then why are we fine with this?
Yeah.
But
Right.
just not
Yeah, that's
case.
the assumption.
Yeah, it's like, no.
Mhm.
Look, I am an actor. I'm in the entertainment industry. I put on costumes and play roles all the time. I've played abusers. That doesn't mean that I'm taking my work home with
Right.
me, or, I play a killer robot on TV. That doesn't mean I'm over here like shooting up the place. So you can't be like, oh, well, you dated, she was on Westworld. So, what'd you expect?
Ugh.
Like, that's why you're dead. It's like, no, this logic does not make
No.
sense.
It doesn't.
And so, like, I expected a hangover.
Mhm.
I expected to be in my 20s and probably go to some wild parties. I was looking for liberation, and I was looking to sort of find myself and explore my sexuality because I was queer. And, I thought I was with somebody that was sensitive to that or understood it. I ended up being wrong about that as well. I didn't go to college, and I went on tour with Brian.
Shit.
Yeah, I know. Like, I really wish I had gone to college, but I really thought that he was more of a mentor and that I was going to, gain wisdom and experience. And again, I thought I would have some wild nights, but I assumed that I would still be in control of what happened to my body and mind, and that there would be consent. There's a way to have fun, wild times and still make sure that A, everybody's of age, and B, everybody's consenting. It's like, I don't know why that's a hard concept for people to grasp. It feels like the whole, well, look at what she was wearing kind of a thing. And in our case, a lot of these girls, were like tattooed, fishnet wearing, goth looking girls. And I feel like people judge them because of the way that they look and thinking they were after something or deserved it in some way just because they wanted to go to a fun party. And it's like, no, this is not how this works.
It doesn't justify the abuse.
Not at all. No. But for some people it does,
Yeah, the whole short skirt thing doesn't really, I mean, listen.
Yeah. What did you expect? Yeah.
I think that has been such an important question for us with our guests is, what did you think you were signing up for? Because there is the initial con from the abuser right at the beginning. If he had said to you, hey, do you want to go on tour? And then I'm going to slowly dismantle your psyche and your sense of intuition and eventually put my initials on your crotch. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd have been like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
You don't
It's not a good
sign up.
sales pitch.
There's not a sign up sheet for rape and abuse. It's just not how this works. And that is why there's no consent. And honestly, the more I found out reading all of the statements online and all of the stories that came out and looking at the ages of some of the girls and looking at the timeline, I knew it was bad. I knew what happened to me was bad. And then I knew what happened to other people was bad. But then the more I read, the more I realized that, as you said, there was never consent. And when I realized that all of this had been happening long before me and long after, it was like this crushing realization of, oh, I didn't just have a bad relationship. I was groomed by a predator from the second that he said hello to me, and he lied to me about who he was. Therefore, every time we were intimate, anytime I felt safe,
It was all a con.
it's all a con. Yeah. And so in a way, it feels like every time we were intimate, almost it feels like a
Absolutely.
violation now, even if every time wouldn't be classified as rape. It's still done under the guise of fraud and
Right.
coercion. And so it's really hard to reconcile all of it.
Have you been in touch with the FGKIA ladies? Hashtag FGKIA stands for Freely Given Knowledgeable Informed Agreement.
No.
Yeah, I'll connect you later.
We did an episode with them.
Their whole thing is about also changing laws because apparently consent, there's no legal definition for it.
Well, it's different in different
Yes,
states.
no across the board definitions.
And you're familiar with the states
Yeah.
statutes, right?
Yeah,
so-
and the laws for consent and the torture laws and the
Yeah.
all of the laws.
And this came up for me because I say on camera, Master, would you brand me? It would be an honor, which I was instructed to say, and I had to follow instructions.
And the reason why you were asked to say that is in case it ever legally came back to haunt
Right.
them. Yeah, it's
Right.
like that's a total move.
It is a move. But actually, there's
Right.
one of the pieces of evidence was Alan telling Allison Mack, ask the women to put their hands up above their heads and say this so that it appears consensual. And that's a recording because, of course, they recorded everything.
And it also demonstrates he knows it's not consensual.
Exactly.
So why would I consent to that?
Yeah.
You know,
Ridiculous.
One of the things too, and we experienced this, one of the people said, yes, but it was consensual to me on the phone. I spoke to someone who was like trying to talk us out of what they knew was coming, which is us going to the news, and it's someone who's still loyal. And they said, yes, but it was consensual. And I said, do you understand when you say, but it was consensual, it adds to the problem? And it was consensual. What's going on up there where this is a guy. And I was like, if you say yes, but it means you don't understand what you're looking at. The fact that there is women agreeing to this abuse around this man is the red flag.
Yeah.
Not yes, but it's yes, and. So if you don't understand that yes, and if you say yes, but, I just know that I'm talking to someone who's doesn't know what they're looking at, because the fact that there are women agreeing to this tells me he doesn't know what he's looking at. And so anyone who says, yes, but, or all that stuff, I just kind of go, you need education.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating.
It is frustrating. And it's also why it took me a long time to even classify some of the things that happened to me as rape, because I was fed sort of the thing that we're all fed, which is like, you have to be held down and screaming and beaten up for it to count, or for there to be no consent. And this idea of the perfect victim. And, especially when you're in a cult like situation where there's like genuine like mind control and like sleep deprivation and food deprivation and like military tactics being done to your brain and body to put you in a state where you'll kind of agree to anything just to make things stop.
Right.
That was true for a lot of the situations I was put in, where you're so scared of somebody and you're so beaten down. You just kind of, and I guess this also could fall into the category of Stockholm syndrome, where you're just like, I'm just going to agree to whatever you want so that I can survive to tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Until I can figure out how to get out of here.
Yeah.
And I think I got stuck in that for what felt like forever, of just like, I just have to play along until I know what to do.
That was part one of our chat with Evan Rachel Wood. Heavy stuff, no, Sarah?
Heavy and important.
Got part 2 coming your way this week, so be sure to listen to that when it drops.
And do let us know what you think. Come hang out with us over on Instagram or leave us a voicemail on our website at alittlebitculty.com. Just know that anything you say or do on our voicemail might get played on this podcast very soon.
And a little note to the Marilyn Manson army. We instantly block victim shamers and obvious trolls, and you might get a personal go fuck yourself from me. So maybe channel your rage somewhere else. Okay? It's not good, okay?
Okay, maybe
It's not good.
make some
okay?
art, like make a song. Open up your garage band and make a song about your hate. Okay, everyone else, be sure to join us over on Patreon if you want to hear us unpack the Evan Rachel Wood interview and other shiny, delicious bonus content. That's where we're going to give our ride or die culty listeners hot exclusives every month in exchange for, well, money.
Find us over at Patreon for everything from exclusive audience Q&As and signed merch to VIP access.
That's VIP, babe.
Right. VIP access to our special The Vow Season 2 after party episodes, starting at $1 million a month.
Just kidding. Our Patreon subscriptions start at $5 a month. And if you're already one of our dear monthly patrons on DonorBox and you want to keep your monthly donation going, now you can also come over to Patreon and get some nice treats as a reward for helping us do this crazy little podcast thing.
Treats.
Yeah, treats.
See you on Instagram and hopefully over on Patreon and also maybe in our dreams, Sarah?
Not our nightmares.
Okay.
We love you.
It's good to be back.
Good to be back. Season 5.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean. I'm hanging on to the weight of my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave, but I know I won't.
Hope you liked this episode. Let's keep the conversation going and come hang out with us on Patreon, where we keep the tape rolling each week with special episodes just for Patreon subscribers and where we get deep into the weeds of unpacking every episode of The Vow.
And if you're looking for our show notes or some sweet, sweet swag or official ALBC podcast merch or a list of our most recommended cult recovery resources, visit our website at alittlebitculty.com.
And for more background on what brought us here, check out Sarah's page-turning memoir. It's called Scarred. True story of how I escaped Nexium, the cult that bound my life. It's available on Amazon, Audible, narrated by my wife, and at most bookstores.
A Little Bit Culty is a Talkhouse podcast and a Trace 120 production. We're executive produced by Sarah Edmondson and Anthony Nippy Ames, with writing, research, and additional production support by senior producer Jess Tardy. We're edited, mixed, and mastered by our rocking producer Will Rutherford of Citizens of Sound, and our amazing theme song, Cultivated, is by John Bryant and co-written by Nigel Asselin. Thank you for listening.